Injured collation officer in Benue rerun elections. Response to treatment.
Civil society groups laud improvement in supplementary elections.
Federal government partners food and agriculture organization towards addressing challenges of rural farmers.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we review the conduct and outcome of March 23 supplementary elections and the way forward for Nigeria's democracy.
All right, now we've been discussing elections and its related issues on Good Morning Nigeria since the first phase of this year's general elections on February 23rd. And now, last weekend, eligible voters in nearly half of the states of the Federation as well as the Federal Capital Territory were once again at the polls, following, of course, the inconclusive nature of the elections, first to the National Assembly, then the governorship and state houses of assembly.
Indeed, Kingsley, of course, the elections have been completed and all the results have been declared. Of course, we do know that Abuja and Adamawa states were somehow left out because of court injunctions. So we shall probably be talking about the fallout from these elections for some time to come, Kingsley.
There's no doubt about that, Claire. The fact is that what we have witnessed again from the rerun or the so-called supplementary elections has been the increased spate of violence associated with the polls. Of course, we first had a taste of that on the 23rd of February. Now, it also turns out that despite the vigorous campaigns against election violence, it is still a feature of our elections, particularly, again, what we saw last weekend in Benue, Kano, and Sokoto.
Of course, Kingsley, we remember also that the Acting Inspector General of Police had directed all the zonal, Assistant Inspector General of Police and their commissioners, of course, to ensure adequate security for voters wherever the supplementary elections were held. But we do know the turnout, the outcome. As usual, abuses of the process. We heard of voter intimidation, vote buying, of course, which we call vote trading, and which, as reported, were facilitated by political thugs with impunity.
Human traffickers are selling human beings as slaves in Africa. It is your responsibility to make sure that you and the people you know do not fall into slavery. Don't believe fake promises of jobs abroad.
People went to say Libya, Italy no use you when they carry me on top water. 4 days, not the
Of control was much smaller than what we saw, for instance, either on the 23rd of February or on the 9th, of March. So pertinent questions to again ask what exactly, is wrong with our election management and coordination, and why is it that thugs and other lawless individuals continue, as it were, to destabilize the process.
Indeed, Kingsley, and a lot of people, especially analysts, election observers, had predicted, a significant improvement on the process, of course, from the previous election. So one would wonder, and the question, of course, to ask is this process, has it come to stay in our history? What can be done to really, check those infractions that have become a part of the political process? And of course, how do we check the politicians, who use any means to win election? And what does this portend, for Nigeria's democracy and the country's political actors, of course, in general? We will be digging deeper, as always, into these issues, and precisely today on the program. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak, and as always, it's the pleasure to always ask to have you begin your day and week with us here on the network service.
All right, Claire, just to, again, delimit the scope of our conversation this morning, this is more like a post-mortem, as it were,
Indeed.
of the supplementary elections that took place at the weekend. And if you recall, just last week, the NTA, or that's to say through Good Morning Nigeria, had a three-part conversation on the political class and the future of Nigeria's democracy. And of course, the instigation for that has to do with the apparent desperation of some members of the political class to grab power at all costs, with the attendant violence that we saw, disruption of the electoral process, and of course, you know, the losses that attended to all of that. So today we'll take a look, of course,
very
at the
instructive that the politicians point the finger backwards.
Well, they can't.
Themselves.
I mean, sometimes they say, oh, well, they are part of the society, and that the vibrations they get also issue from the society. But as our guest did say at the time, you know, a class must be capable of reinventing itself. Otherwise, it perishes.
But one thing, Kingsley, we must note in this particular election is the maturity of the electorate. We could see the divergence from the presidential elections and what has happened in the governorship and House of State Houses of Assembly elections. I mean, the outcome tells the people's mind.
Yeah, that's voting outcome. But also, in particular, in terms of the disposition of the electorate, in some instances, there were reports of resistance of the thugs, who tried to disrupt either the voting or the collation. Unfortunately, of course, they were doing so with bare arms. All right, bare hands, rather. All right, that's our outline for our program this morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I join my colleague Claire in also welcoming you to the program, reaching you as always on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. In the course of the program, we shall bring you our regular complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. But in the meantime, let's take the highlights of the news, and here is Ogwa Vivian Oyedibia. Hi, Ogwa, good morning.
Good morning, Kingsley. Claire, good morning, Nigeria. Here's the news. The Benue State Resident Electoral Commissioner, Netawe Yelwata, says the Boko Collation Officer, Professor Comfort Doshima Tule, is responding to treatment at the Benue State University Hospital, Makudi. He stated this in an interview with Charles Abba.
She's with Teaching Hospital, and she's doing very well. Doctors have actually, assessed her, and it's not a life-threatening, shot on her. So we are confident that she will soon be up, and so there's no any, fear or need to worry that the way people are insinuating. So she's talking. She's very okay. So the issue of somebody rumoring that she's dead, I don't know where that news comes from.
And the victory of President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo at the just concluded general elections has been attributed through the mercies of God. Bishop of Remo Anglican Diocese, Most Reverend Olushina Ofakwe, stated this at an interdenominational service of praises and thanksgiving organized by the Vice President at his Ikeneremo country home in Ogun State. Dignitaries from across the country joined the Vice President to give thanks to God.
And all of us will be delivered by the Lord in the mighty name of Jesus.
Professor Osinbajo. He is an embodiment of sincerity, diligence, intellect, and he's a good man in whom I'm proud to emulate and call my leader.
And results of the rerun elections in some parts of the country have already been collated and announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, as Governor Solomon Lalong of Plateau State and Aminu Tambuwal of Sokoto State have been declared winners. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room has observed improvement in INEC's conduct of the supplementary elections. This was indicated at a post-election media briefing in Abuja.
Situation Room acknowledges the efforts of INEC in ensuring the timely deployment of materials, officials, and the commencement of polls. Largely, smart card readers functioned properly. Situation Room is therefore concerned that abuse of electoral process and violence have occurred despite the deployment of top-level police officials, including a DIG, 3 Assistant Inspector Generals of Police, and Commissioners of Police.
And away from the elections, the federal government and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations have set agenda and program towards addressing socio-economic challenges among rural farmers. Farmers are being empowered with modern methods of production and storage of produce.
You can only be a successful farmer if after production you are able to keep your records, you are able to do your accounting, and it assists you in the management of your business.
Now I think I can be able to differentiate between record keeping and the farm accounts.
If I want to start a plan, I will keep a record of what I start with, and I will see if there is a profit or a loss.
With this training, they will become more organized, they will be able to keep proper records.
The Nigerian Immigration Service is set to boost its activities in border areas through integrated border management approaches. To this end, the NIS is collaborating with the United Nations Organization for Migration and other relevant agencies working on border management issues to enhance security in national land border areas.
The Immigration Service has deployed technology whereby by a press of your finger, both your travel documents and your travel history is made available. So whatever you were denying or whatever you will have been denying will be made open, manifest here. So by deploying technology, just one aspect I'm giving you now, we're able to identify real Nigerians.
Within the framework of this project, IOM is supporting the government of Nigeria to develop a Nigerian immigration national border management strategy aimed at enhancing the agency's capacity in the effective management of Nigeria's borders within their stipulated mandate.
And away from that, swapping guns for drums, the Nigerian Army has marked its 2018 West African Social Activities, WASA, at the Army Headquarters Garrison. The WASA, a tradition which promotes unity among the soldiers, opened amidst much fanfare and entertainment, showcasing various cultural troupes.
The constitutional mandate assigned to the Nigerian Army remains to defend the territorial integrity of the country, curtail internal insurrections, and act in aid to civil authority to preserve our collective national interests and ensure national security.
And that's it from the news desk. The program continues after this break with Claire and Kinsley.
Ayé ò ní rí ẹmú o. Ó yà wọnú ògo tuntun lọ. Ẹlẹ́dàá ni. Ẹ tàbí yín kọ́. Ṣé ìwọ ti rókun tó bẹ̀rí?
Kò lè gbẹ́ bí. Àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀.
Ó yá fi sí spíkà. Ọlọ́run á ràn yín lọ́wọ́.
Get 5 times your recharge value to call all networks without restrictions. Recharge and dial *234# to enjoy this offer. Available to new and existing customers.
Ìwọ náà borí ẹ̀ wá kó wá gbàdúrà. Á dáa fún ẹ. Ṣé orí bó.
Airtel, the smartphone network. Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capsule for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid. Protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Introducing Dettol Antiseptic Liquid in Sachet for only 40 naira. Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
A new
new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toba Dabaden and Ishak Modibo-Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA Standard TV, ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency, calls them TV Guide, your indispensable companion. X-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Okay, this is Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for staying with us. If you've just joined us, this is the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest TV network. Right on time for some business news. And United Nations Economic Commission for Africa identifies tax reform and digitization as key to financing development on the continent. And we also have a report that project management experts are calling for more inclusion of project managers in all aspects of the economy, and that is to guarantee stability. Joy Uzo has been monitoring these developments.
Africa must digitize its economies, broaden its tax base, prevent further deterioration of fiscal and debt positions, and aim for double-digit growth to achieve the United Nations 2030 Global Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and the AU Agenda 2063. This is contained in the 2019 Economic Report on Africa released over the weekend at the Conference of Ministers. This year's Economic Report on Africa, a flagship publication of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, ECA, focuses on fiscal policies and states that government revenues account for 21.4%, insufficient to meet countries' development financing needs. Vera Songwe, the ECA's executive secretary, states at the launch that the report identifies several quick wins in Africa's pursuit of additional fiscal space to finance its accelerated development. It also focuses on the instrumental role of fiscal policy in crowding in investment and creating adequate fiscal space for social policy, including supporting women and youth-led small and medium enterprises. And in another development with a lot of lapses in some sectors, especially building, which has led to building collapse and resulted to heavy financial loss, even human loss in different parts of the country. Some project management experts say developed economies always factor adequate project management as a way of stabilizing their economies. They said management skill is what the 21st century economy requires to flourish.
When you look at the level of corruption in the country, people get projects, they get contracts, they sell it. They sell it to people. So by the time they sell to one person, the other person sells to the other. See, the budget for that particular project is reduced.
So the person that bought it, the last person that bought it, will now perform poorly. You won't kill him because his name is not project manager. He just collected the job or bought it, and he must make his own gain. But if there is a project manager in that project, the project manager will know that his name is at stake, his license is at stake. He cannot just perform poorly and simply get out of it. No. He's like the art made us to understand that if you don't perform well, your license can be withdrawn.
But to us, it's not just reducing costs, it's doing that without compromising standard and quality.
And we believe that when that is done, we'll have safer and more durable projects. And that's going to save a lot of costs in the economy.
They employ relevant agencies of government to ensure that the Chartered Institute of Project Managers of Nigeria Establishment Act, signed by President Muhammadu Buhari in January 2018, become domesticated and effective in their operations, so that it will check the excesses of those who have compromised standard of project management and as such lead to prudent management of resources. According to them, the economy booms when the round peg occupies the right hole. With Business News, I'm Joy Uzo.
Thank you, Joy, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us now, we'll take a look at newspapers in our review segment.
Right, let's welcome Bayo Atoyebe. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Claire.
It's a brand new day.
Yes, a brand new week. How was your weekend?
Well.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, good to see you. I hope you had a restful weekend.
Yes, thank you. I did.
Very well. Okay, now the front pages of the papers this morning are fairly predictable, as it were, posting reports on the outcome of the supplementary elections that took place in nearly half of the states of the Federation, as well as the FCT. The Punch newspaper has as its lead story, APC's Ganduje, Lalong win, and PDP's Tambuwal and Otom re-elected, with the rider Hussaini, Jime, Aliyu, and Yusuf Kik vow to challenge results. Then you can see the illustration there also on the front page. You have bar charts along with the photographs. That's the illustration on the front page of the Punch newspaper. It says governorship supplementary poll results. Beginning from the left, you see the APC and PDP Sokoto, and with a slim margin of, probably the slimmest of margins of 342. And also APC and PDP in Kano, you see the margin there, just about 8,000 plus. And of course in Benue, you have the margin also indicated, and in Plateau, we also have that indicated. Now, Daily Trust also has it as its lead story, saying Ganduje, Tambuwal, Lalong, Otom win second term, Abubakar and Bindo waiting for court verdict. These are governors of and contestants in Bauchi and Adamawa states. You also have the illustrations there on the front page of the paper. One, of course, is a map showing the states affected by the supplementary elections, as well as overall standing of the parties in the states. Claire.
Yes, Kingsley, like you said, the headlines are predictable, and but the interesting thing for me is how the headlines have been cast. They have been cast differently, of course, depending on the perspective of the paper. So let me start with the New Telegraph, and it says that Tambuwal Otom survive APC's onslaught. and Ganduje wins Kano. Of course, the riders also quite interesting to read. Again, from the New Telegraph, Lalong wins in Plateau, Useni heads to tribunal, Bauchi governor's fate hangs in the balance, and PDP APC kick in Kano, Plateau, Benue, and Sokoto. That's how New Telegraph, of course, has cast that headline. And Daily Independent has another way. It says, Tambua Autumn win in Sokoto, Benue. And there is, of course, a semicolon indicating Lalong Ganduje in Plateau and Kano. The riders read, Bauchi PDP Guba candidate increases lead over incumbent. Useni Jime head to court. Sokoto APC rejects governor's victory. And PDP says Kano supplementary election sham. Now, let me return to the Nigerian Tribune. Again, the headline says PDP wins Sokoto, Benue, APC wins Kano, Plateau. Quite expected. Now, the rider there, Bayo, I know you're itching to say something. Court delays PDP celebration in Bauchi over Tafawa Balewa LG. And Kano PDP candidate says rerun, robbery of people's mandate. Elections marred by violence, security misconduct, intimidation of journalists and observers. That's Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. And, of course, we have the Yaga supplementary poll indication of democratic recession. The details of these headlines you can find on the different pages. They are there. But again, the papers have also raised the bar by giving us some, of course, graphic presentation of how the different parties, have won in the different states. You have the linear graph and you have, of course, the map there. Bayo.
Yes, indeed, Claire. Some conclusions have been attained for over the pending inconclusive elections because of the elections that took place over the weekend. Governors of Benue, Plateau, Kano, and Sokoto have won the bid for their second term. However, those of Bauchi and Adama will have to await the court proceedings pending on suits that have been pending at those courts. Both Governor Samuel Otom of Benue and Aminu Waziri Tambuwal of Sokoto, who both defected to the People's Democratic Party, won their election on the platform of their new party. Otom polled 434,473 to beat Emmanuel Jime, who scored 345,155 votes. Jime has already indicated he's heading for the courts to challenge that victory. In Sokoto, Sokoto produced the slimmest margin of all victories so far. The difference was 342 votes that separated the lead candidate, Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, who scored 512,002, while his opponent, Alhaji Ahmed Ali of APC, scored 511,660 votes. Simon Lalong of Plateau and Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje of Kano both won their election too. Lalong polled 595,582 to beat Senator Jeremiah Hussein, who scored 546,813. Jeremiah Hussein has already indicated that he's heading for the court to challenge it. Governor Abdullahi Ganduje of Kano polled 1,033,695 to beat Engineer Abba Yusuf, who registered 1,024,713. It is the second time that the myth of secession has been broken in Kano. Since Abubakar Rimi, up down through to Abdul Dawakin Tofa, Sabu Bakinzo, Kabiru Gaya, no governor ever had second term until Ibrahim Shekaro, the Sardauna of Kano, came. He was the only one who has succeeded. Now, Ganduje is the second that have broken that myth. In Kano, there were violence that were reported in some locations. In Kano, Madu Gamo ward, as well as Nasarawa, saw some incidences. In fact, it was the commotion there was resolved by the Commissioner of Police, who had to rescue electoral officers at Nasarawa. In Benue, there was disruption at Gama, and also Ukum, materials were seized and burned. In fact, the collation officer for Boko, Professor Comfort Doshima, when he was traveling to Makurdi to complete the collation, she was shot at and had to be taken to the hospital in Makurdi. For Bauchi, the Abuja High Court will rule today if INEC's challenge of its jurisdiction to hold the collation for Tafawa Balewa will stand. In Adamawa, the supplementary election was held by because Movement for the Restoration of Democracy, for Defense of Democracy, MRDD, has sought a cancellation because its logo was omitted. So far, APC now has 20 states, People's Democratic Party 12, Abuja has 1. There are 3 pending results, that is Rivers, Adamawa, and Bauchi. Rivers is scheduled for April 13th, Adamawa and Bauchi are depending on the course to declare their status.
All right. Punch newspaper now, this time other stories above the nameplate. 13 billion naira Ikoyi cash. EFCC declares ex-NIA DG, okay, and wife wanted. That's page 7. Fire destroys over 20 houses and many shops in Lagos. That's pages 4 and 5. Widow of slain civil defense officer appeals to IG, that's Acting Inspector General of Police, for justice. Again, that's to be found inside the paper. Beside the nameplate of the Punch, Yoruba elders write Buhari on true federalism as Igbo leaders insist on restructuring. And then right at the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper, above the strip advert there, you have the following headlines. Suspected herdsmen rape woman to death. That took place reportedly in Akwanga, Nasarawa State. A Plateau woman demands justice for siblings molested by neighbor. And foreign investors withdrew 55 billion naira from stock market in February, and that's according to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And also very quickly, below the nameplate of the Daily Trust newspaper, we have the following headlines. APC mobilizing governors and key chieftains ahead of 9th Assembly. And oil workers warn against hiking electricity tariff. And why we failed to attain MDG targets on water. That's according to the federal government. And also at the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, 3 headlines there. Inflation rate not reflective of current economic situation. Of course, that's an economic report on page 17 of the paper. And it's also reporting there, the EFCC declaring ex-NIA boss okay and wife wanted. Followed on to Buhari, stop allocation of oil blocks to individuals and companies.
All right, Kingsley, I'll equally have some interesting stories, but just before I take the other stories, I'd like to point out the 2 picture stories on the front page of the New Telegraph, and to my left-hand column, that's to your right, you find 2 physically challenged men celebrating the Sokoto State Governor. You find that, but the one I like for us to really look at is the second one, which is, of course, we see the caption here says a cross-section of the governor's supporters celebrating his victory in Sokoto State. But as we can see, that man is standing on the streetlight pole, if I'm mistaken by Kingsley. You see that?
Yes. So.
I mean, we've been seeing some of these kind of
bizarre celebrations. Yes.
Very bizarre, very bizarre. But at the bottom there, you see Saraki PDP plot to install Goje as Senate President and plan unsettles APC. APC NWC decides on zoning formula. And if we take you to the Daily Independent, you'll find just atop the nameplate there, desperation will make senators, reps repeat Saraki's stunt. And that's coming from Abdul Mumuni. The writers speak, I'll respect APC's position on zoning, Senator Lawan. And just also to the right corner, you find protection of consumers' right, our major priority, CPC DG is telling us details of that on page 24. At the bottom of the picture story, you find how Agbaje hijacked money sent for campaigns, and that's attributed to the PDP. And the writer says he couldn't render accounts when confronted, and why I won't render account to party Agbaje. There are quite other stories trending, but let's again take the final one from the Nigerian Tribune, just a little below the nameplate. Nigeria ranks next to India in open defecation. That's coming from the minister, unfortunately, page 5.
Yes, sadly too, but that's one of the bases for which there was water emergency that has been declared, and one of the factors was to ensure that potable water is provided most cities, particularly the rural areas, and that challenge of open defecation is one of the state of emergencies that has been declared in health sectors. Over the weekend...
Are we paying lip service to expanding the population that has access to potable water for domestic use, for instance? They also have water for industrial and water for agricultural use. But for the domestic purposes, let's ask ourselves, because simultaneous with all of these campaigns, you keep hearing talk about, the number of boreholes being sunk around the country, those boreholes are too many. But how are you going to get water to the household without reticulation? Reticulation. Yeah, I mean, when you were growing up, you saw that in the cities.
Yes.
You know, yes, you had a water board, you had a water tower, and then, you know, the pipes that came around. But which city in Nigeria do you find pipe-borne water, you know, getting to the household? Other than Abuja, for instance, phase 1. Go to other parts of the Abuja city. Do they have
Abuja,
reticulation?
yes. It doesn't cover the whole of the city.
It doesn't.
Yes. And that is why every individual has become his own local government. You provide your own water by sinking borehole. You provide your own electricity by installing a generator.
Absolutely.
Those are the challenges.
What will happen is this, and the cost is going to be enormous for us. Because these days, you know, when they are talking about projects, it's usually roads. Roads, we have built roads, so you see city roads, X, Y, Z. By the time we get serious about supplying potable water through the public means, they are going to have to excavate all these roads that they have constructed, along with the gutters, because you have to lay the pipes.
Pipes, yes.
I remember, you know, gentlemen, in those days when we were much younger, when you walk from, you know, home from school or from school, you know, back home, and you could stop somewhere where,
Public
of course,
taps.
public taps,
Yes.
and you know, and turn it on, and you know. But
Some of those pumps, I remember the head there, usually very sturdy,
Very
you know, very tough. You have to press it, and it to
really
hold,
press
you
it,
know.
yes.
You remember Bayo. Some of them double-headed, you know, the other one will be on that side, and then, that's right.
Well, over the weekend, the Osun State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal, sitting at Abuja on Friday, nullified the election of Adegboyega Oyetola, and already the governor, in a broadcast, said that there's no cause for alarm. Said the judgment, that is a split decision, is a subject of appeal, which they will pursue, and he has enjoyed all the persons in Osun State to remain calm, and because they have confidence in the judiciary, and that is why they are hoping that this confidence will be upheld when they appeal. The other story has been discussed by Kingsley. The Economy of Financial Crime has declared the former Director General of National Intelligence Agency, Ayodele Oke, and his wife wanted. They failed to appear in court to stand for a 4-count charge bordering on money laundering. You recall that they had questions to answer about monies found at Osborne Ikoyi in April 2017. The story that Kingsley referred to, oil workers under the auspices of Pengasam have warned that electricity consumers should not be forced to pay for any higher tariff of electricity. They said that they issued this in the communique after their meeting, and they said that it will not condone a hiking of electricity tariff being contemplated by the electricity agency. They said consumers should pay for services rendered, not seem to have been rendered. Meanwhile, there's been some other development. The Transmission Company of Nigeria says it has achieved a new daily grid energy rate of 110,724 megawatts hour. And that is also to supplement what they have reached, or the peak for the grid generated power of 5,335 megawatts. So that is some positive development. However, there is an enhanced capacity of transmission by the Rehabilitation and Expansion Program, TREP, and they are hoping that if this continues, electricity will continue to be most stable.
All right, Bayo, you know, there's also the story, I think this happened last week, of a civil defense officer, you know, who unfortunately was beaten to death at a traffic control point. We have it on the Punch front page, and it said, widow of slain NSCDC officer appeals to IG for justice. Details can be found on pages 4 and 5. I think there are a number of issues arising from this. Of course, the police authorities have said they are launching their investigation into what actually happened. And the regular police force also indicated that it wasn't actually their men, but there were some traffic wardens who were responsible for that. But the questions are many. One, do you control traffic using violence? I mean, was the civil defense officer, I mean, did they attack the officers? In other words, did they act in self-defense? If you recall on this program, at some point there was a proposal to arm Federal Road Safety Corps officers who are on duty because some of them had suffered attack or assaults from motorists, particularly at remote locations on the highway. And part of the argument you made on that occasion, and we all agreed, was that, look, at the end of the day, you don't require arms, to control traffic. You have smartphones and other devices that you can use to record the misconduct or the vehicle plate numbers and other relevant details of an offending driver or motorist. But with this incident that happened, I think right here in Abuja, I think it's unfortunate.
Yes, the Acting Inspector General of Police is very strong on that. He has already indicated and invited the family that when the autopsy is going to be performed, they could have their representation there. And he has clearly stated that nothing will be swept under the carpet. Justice will be done. So I think something is being done about that.
Okay, Bayo, let's take our editorial this morning, and it's coming from the Daily Sun newspaper, and it's at page 15. And it's on CBN's new impetus for oil palm sector. Now, in part, the editorial says that to achieve its dream to revive the oil palm sector, government must address the problems that led to the stifling of the sector in the first instance. It must address the problem of acquiring farmlands and long-term funding sources at affordable costs. It adds that if the sector is revived, the country would likely earn $10 billion worth of foreign exchange at present global price of palm oil. And that every effort, of course, should be made to ensure that the subsector of the industry is encouraged.
Yes, you recall that we looked at this some time ago, and it is based on the fact that Nigeria used to be one of the lead producers of oil in the world. But today, we are now back to, I think, the 5th position in the world. And the initiative by the central bank is similar to the Anchor Borrowers Program that was put together for the rice production. And so what the editorial is saying that if that is achieved and we get the cooperation of the South-South and the South-East states to buy into it, then we'll be able to improve our current production, which is about 800,000. And presently, we import between 400 to 600,000 metric tons of oil. And so we now have a gap to catch. Malaysia produces about 25 million, Indonesia about 41 million. And the initiative of the editorial is that if Nigeria gets its act together, it should be able to catch up with those 4 leading countries. And it will go a long way to improving the nature of our agricultural produce, diversifying the economy, and also an avenue for employment for our teeming youths.
Okay, Bayo, I think just before we end this review, I think I must give credit. Earlier on, I read out on the headlines something about the CPC and, of course, protecting, carrying out their responsibility of protecting consumers' rights. And I had a personal experience just a few months. I had gone to the market and I purchased a particular, fruit drink, and a pack, one of the packs, happened to have been contaminated. Of course, I made a report, I lodged a complaint, and indeed, I didn't expect, any response or prompt response. But it happened that I did get, a feedback from the manufacturers of that particular, and of course, an apology, not just an apology, Kingsley. I was given a compensation in terms of the fruit. So I think that we must commend the consumer rights. Yes, the initiative of the consumer rights, and also ask that they also, move to other areas. Electricity, for instance, we're talking about electricity. Consumer rights should go into the issue of electricity and protect, the rights of consumers.
The one that worries me, every Tom, Dick, and Harry coming over the air, particularly over radio and television, and making claims and inviting people who come to several workshops. The Consumer Protection Council must make sure that those ones are genuine and just people are not taking advantage of the electronic media, the credibility they possess, and use it as an avenue to dupe people. Some of those things they call people for are actually a sham. So they need to look into all those.
Bayo, 2 very important points that yourself and Clay have made this morning. We have seen a rush of, perhaps this issue we'll take a look at some point, workshops, training, seminars, and you find all kinds of fees that are indicated there. And who regulates this, and what is the value for money? So that's a very important point. The other one has to do with Claire's experience. But again, very significant the way the consumer protection has handled it, and then the response of the manufacturers. They've been spared now a tortious liability for which the locals classicals is Donahue and Stevenson. All right, Bayo, it's on that note, we'd like to thank you for being with us on the program this morning. We see you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, it will be a review of the supplementary elections with, of course, incidents of violence in some of the locations where the rerun took place.
I was a little girl. I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir. And your shirts are always so white. I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results. Shh, it's our little secret. It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Thomas Daba then and Ishak Modibo Kawu now. This edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency, calls for TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Team huddle. But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Son, being good at something requires strength. It requires pushing yourself. It requires putting in more. That's why the new improved Bornvita is packed with vitality and a great taste.
All right, time to kickstart our discussion and, of course, the review of the supplementary elections in parts of the country. We have a very short backgrounder, and it was put together by a correspondent, Oyeyemi Ajayi. Let's have it now.
23rd March 2019 was the set date for the supplementary elections in some states, after being declared inconclusive during the March 9 governorship and state houses of assembly elections. Reasons for the supplementary elections include the instances of overvoting, ballot snatching and thuggery, failure of card readers, voter apathy with some records of fire incidents at the polling units, among others, and all these problems were meant to be corrected during the supplementary elections. Despite the challenges in the previous elections, the people came out in their numbers in some states to exercise their civic rights. The exercise was said to be mostly violence-free, though in some states like Sokoto, Kano, and Benue, there were disruption of election by hoodlums, burning of ballot papers, and an INEC official was even shot in the leg in Benue State. To a large extent, INEC was commended for a well-organized supplementary election, but some observers believe more still needs to be done to strengthen the democratic process by 2023. What areas need to be addressed? When will the Nigerian democracy and election mature? These are some of the issues to be raised with guests on Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
All right, Oyeyemi Ajayi, thank you very much for that background. Now, of course, we're going to take reports from our correspondents who witnessed the supplementary elections in the Federal Capital Territory, as well as Sokoto and one of our other network centers. First, let's welcome Ifeoma Ojinta, who witnessed the rerun elections in the Federal Capital Territory for the area councils. Ifeoma, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, Kinsley. It's good to be here.
Okay. And also with us here in the studios, we signed him off a while ago, but of course, he's been discussing election matters in terms of reviewing the newspapers, and has followed the stories very closely. Bayo Atebe, pleasure to have you with us again.
Thank you for having me.
Nigeria.
Kinsley, we of course will be having our correspondent from Enugu. He will be joining us. That's Bright Eboche. Will be joining us via Skype. I don't know. Okay, he's right there. Bright, thank you for joining us via Skype from Enugu. And of course, we have right there Abdulrahman Usman Jubrila in our Sokoto studio. Both of you, thank you for joining us. Well, we have invited some civil society analysts to join us here. Unfortunately, we haven't sent them. We're expecting them. We're also expecting Esther Uzoma. We expected, of course, Kinsley, the police spokesperson, to also be here. Well, we're looking forward to having them.
All right. In fact, let's begin the conversation straight away by going to our correspondent in Sokoto. That's Abdulrahman Usman Jubrila. Abdulrahman, let's get your take. I mean, Sokoto was one of the hotly, if you like, contested states in terms of the supplementary elections, and the final outcome does, of course, bear that out. What we are hearing is that the final outcome just came down to 342. Some also said 341. Give us a sense of how the supplementary elections went.
Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigerians. And the supplementary elections in Sokoto, as you rightly said, is the margin is 342, not 341. And the supplementary election, in terms of the start of the election itself, the process, there was a heavy presence of security, especially to the flash point areas where the supplementary elections were held. That is in the Sokoto South Senatorial District, that is Kebbi, where elections were held in Kuchi, Foku, and the Gada area, which is in the Sokoto East Senatorial District. Within the metropolis, the major places where the elections were held within the metropolis is just 12 polling units. And though with the heavy presence of security, and there was no security problems, and everyone was on his toll to ensure that the election was hitch-free and devoid of any problem. And at the collation center, I think we just had 2 cancellations, and the cancellations were due to overvoting, and but there was no any violence that erupted the elections. And so far, the contenders, the governor who was re-elected, and who is also the present governor, Tambuwal, was addressed his supporters yesterday after declaration of the results, where he called on them to be law-abiding. They should not harass anybody, no intimidation. And the APC, on its part, vote to challenge the outcome of the results. Even at the collation center, the party agents made some observations to the chief returning officer, where the chief returning officer directed them to follow the right channel of submitting their grievances, if they have any.
Stay with you, just like for you, because you've been on ground, you know, of course, since the start of the elections. What is the mood of the supporters of both, you know, parties, the winning party and, of course, the losing party? How have they taken, you know, the results?
It's a normal routine, and the winning party demonstrated the losing party demonstrated a maturity at the collations, even at the announcement of the result. Only the party agents of the winning party were there. There was no representation of the APC before before the announcement of the result. And the mood in town, there was there are celebrations going on, but there is no any violence. Security, there are presence of security, and people are going about their normal businesses since after the announcement of the result. Only 1 or 2 cases you will see maybe some problems, but in terms of violence, and everybody is going about his normal business.
Abdul Rahman, what explains the closeness of the outcome of the elections? 342.
What explains the closeness is that both the contending parties really campaigned and worked out to succeed, and in the people are more enlightened now, and to know who to vote for, and especially the supplementary elections. There is a heavy presence of security at all the polling units, and the INEC officials were adequately there, and party agents of both of the 2 contending parties were seen at the polling units monitoring the elections, and there was a high turnout of voters. Almost 70% of the expected voters had turned out to cast their vote, and at the supplementary election, the APC that came second even was leading at the end of the collation of the supplementary elections. But when they merged the elections with the main election, the PDP won with just the 342 votes that came between them.
Rahman, thank you. We'll still return to you in a short while. But let's go to Enugu. Of course, Bright Ebuche is joining us via Skype. Bright, we thank you for staying on. Let's have an understanding of what aspect of the supplementary elections took place in Enugu.
Good morning, Kingsley, on set again on Good Morning Nigeria. The supplementary election that took place here in Imo State on Saturday, 23rd March 2019, showed clearly that both the INEC and the security agencies seem to have upped their game from the last governorship election, which was held here on the 9th of March 2019. In the area of arrival of both personnel and electro-sensitive materials, everything was on cue, came on time, and accreditation and voting also went on smoothly. The usual card reader malfunctioning which we had in previous elections, some of the challenges were not there. And we also saw that the electorate were eager. You know, the crowd was compared to the presidential National Assembly election anyway. The crowd was more eager to cast their vote, and especially in the area of ballot snatching, electoral violence, and the likes, we didn't record any. It's also pertinent to mention that we've already had 22 out of the 27 local governments, which was held on March 9, 2019. We had 22 down, and that one, the PDP already won 9 seats. The Action Alliance won 7, while the All Progressives Grand Alliance had 6 seats. So it was just 5 more local governments where electoral violence occurred in the March 9 governorship election that they had rerun. And the conclusion, of course, were out. We had 4 seats in Olu, Ngokpala, Ikeduru, Ukuta, while the Action Alliance was able to take the last seat, AA. So in total, the PDP have more seats now in the State House of Assembly, 13, while the Action Alliance now have 8 and ABGA 6. This is how it's shared, the distribution is.
Thank you very much. We will return to you later on in the course of the conversation. But let's come now to our Abuja studios. Ifeoma Ojinta, of course, you covered the area council elections in the area councils, other than, of course, AMAC, I believe, where the rerun elections took place. What was your experience?
Well, it was quite an interesting experience. The elections, held in 41 polling units, which cuts across 5 area councils. We had 1 councillorship seat in contention in Abuja as well as Gwagwalada. But the major areas where election took place were Buhari, Kuje, and Kwali, where elections and for the chairmanship position, were declared inconclusive during the 9th March elections. But we had, we were afraid that we would experience the issue of voter apathy. But then the electorate turned out in their numbers, to cast their ballots, and choose those whom they want to represent them in various positions. The electoral umpire, INEC FCT, were on ground on time. Voting commenced when it should be. But then some thugs, tried to disrupt elections in certain places like Shedda Sarki in Kwali Area Council. And one particular polling unit, election did not even hold at all because people ran away. Then INEC officials had to return electoral materials back to the INEC Area Council office. But then in Rubochi, this is in Kuje Area Council, they thugs tried to disrupt the process, but the people resisted, and eventually the security personnel came, and everything was then in order, and election took place. During the 9th March elections, most of the inconclusive elections was as a result of violence, which occurred during collation. But during the process, voting in the morning, it was peaceful here in the FCT. But then at collation, that is talking about 9th of March election, but at collation, we now begin to experience violence, snatching away of very sensitive electoral materials like the result sheets, particularly in Kuje Area Council. Then in Buhari, I think we had the issue of overvoting and also pockets of violence in some polling units. But this time around, they tried to disrupt the election during voting. Election did not hold in some places in Kwali, but then when the people resisted in Kuje and some part of Kwali, and security personnel came, they were able to repel the attack, and the election went on, and eventually...
I'm wondering, when Kingsley, and when they say the people resisted, I'm wondering how they were able to do that. Again, Ifeoma, some people, especially the civil society, have made observations of improvement in these supplementary elections over, the previous election. Did you see any, or what kind of improvement, can you possibly tell us that happened, apart from the people resisting? And how did they resist anyway?
Okay, first, INEC, did everything possible, to ensure that their materials arrived on time. They retrained their personnel. They had very functional card readers, deployed to polling units. And the people on their own, conducted themselves, properly or in an orderly manner. But for the thugs who tried to, disrupt the elections, and then the people resist.
Did they use their bare hands? I don't know. I'm just wondering, how were they able to do it?
No. When the thugs came in Rubochi, in Kuje, the people, they started throwing stones, they wanted to, go away with the electoral materials, but they didn't. The people resisted. They were throwing stones, and then the police came, and I think we had, let's say, the security personnel too were,
we are very
enough.
to give their own backing.
Yes. So.
All right, thank you very much. We don't have any sound bites or visuals from Kano, our correspondent from Kano, but of course there were incidents of reported violence in Kano, particularly Gama and elsewhere, where the tension was intense. Bayo, look. Taking a look at what we saw in the supplementary election is not a general election. This is just make good, rerun, involving, even though you had almost half of the states of the federation, they were just pockets of polling units where they had to complete the elections. And yet, in terms of violence, or in terms of disruption of the process, the same old stories.
Yes, sadly there were disruptions, initiative to disrupt seriously in Kano, at least on 2 or 3 locations. Gama was one of them, Maguda, I can't remember the name correctly now, and also Nasarawa. But the police were up and doing, and were able to stem that. Now, when talks come to a place to disrupt it, if the electorates are not scared and they stand their grounds, because they know what they are doing is illegal, they are usually challenged. In fact, if you recall, during the presidential election, it was very close to the Women's International Day. Women stopped some thugs in snatching ballot papers in, I think it was in Anambra or somewhere there. They stopped them and said, you can't take the ballot papers away, and they succeeded in restraining them. Well, the challenge here is that because they were supplementary elections, the scope of the challenge for INEC was limited. Therefore, INEC was there timelessly, materials were there satisfactorily. But the challenge has always been with the politicians who have used their vanguards, the so-called vanguards, their thugs, who come to disrupt the situation. It always happens where they feel threatened because their interest will be threatened. Either they feel they are likely to lose or something else is untoward there. But I didn't monitor anywhere, but at home, I was able to monitor domestically across the media on what was going. And what I found very fascinating, for instance, in the instance of the Sokoto, the returning officer, Professor Fatima Mukhtar, she was very firm and also very calm. And when the supplementary results came, at the end of the day, she gave everybody her attention and said they should wait. We are waiting for a result from one local government. And when that came, the APC was leading with a margin of about 3,176 votes. And originally, already they were behind by about 3,476 votes. So by the time she added the tally, the development that came was that there is now a possibility of an inconclusive election within that inconclusive thing they did. Because the margin of 342 that was between the lead candidate and the second candidate is far less than the number of persons who were not able to vote for the local government within that area that couldn't vote due to one thing or the other. So already I think the All Progressive Congress have already indicated that they are going to court on that basis.
That's right. That's right. I mean, because it's no longer inconclusive because a declaration and return have both been made,
Yes.
for that. So any other issue now will be post-election that you head to the tribunal. But Bayo, look, we can try to whitewash what happened on Saturday, but the spectacle of the burning of electoral materials in Benue.
Yes.
I mean, when you look at the bonfire being made of the property of the federal government, and indeed the process of conducting the election, what does this tell us? I mean, right from the 23rd of February, we saw these incidents. On the 9th of March, we saw these incidents. Last weekend, we have also seen these incidents. What picture does this paint of our elections?
Well, except that people take election to the extremes. And when I say people, I mean politicians. Because they are the ones who feel that they have stakes interests at stake. During the gubernatorial election, we had the same experience, particularly burning of ballot papers. It happened in Lagos. It happened in Rivers. It happened in Benue now, where people will come forcefully gather materials and just set them ablaze. They are just deliberately trying to obliterate any data from being at least collated for the purposes of that election. And it stems from the fact that because we do not want security presence, overt security presence, armed security presence in polling units and collation centers. So the tendency is that the policemen who are there have no arms. They don't have even ordinary batons. So when the thugs came and the policemen are overwhelmed, they certainly will not want to put their lives in danger. And that's what happens. And sometimes security for the elections is always placed at 3 levels. The policeman is in charge of the polling unit. It's not supposed to be armed. But because we have shortage of policemen, you have civil defense, road safety, sometimes custom, and even immigration all come into help.
Together.
But wherever they come to help, it is the policeman who is there who is in charge of all of them. All of them are not armed. And sometimes because they are dispersed across they become vulnerable when thugs come in huge numbers, armed with cutlasses and other implements. Then they will have to go away, and that is how they get overwhelmed.
Okay,
but the danger is that the mobile group that are supposed to be on standby, they are supposed to be called upon when there are such threats, most often than not, either are not available or do not respond early enough to stem some of these developments.
You know, Claire, that's a very important part of what we are seeing with election security. I mean, the details may not be known to us, but when you hear of the, shall we say now, tens of thousands of security officers and agencies that have been mobilized for election purposes, at some point, a review will be necessary, Bayo, to say, look, how useful were these men that you deployed? Fine, a policeman shouldn't bear arms or doesn't bear arms at the polling unit. But a policeman has, or the other assistants, have the opportunity of calling for reinforcement. And why is it that in a majority of the cases, that reinforcement isn't forthcoming?
All right, Bayo, let me just put you on hold and bring, since we're talking about security matters now, I'm bringing again Bright Ibotre. Bright, just to correct, Bright covered the elections in Imo State, but is joining us via Skype from Enugu. Bright, from the statistics or results you read earlier on, of course, about the Ayazu areas, Abo, Izilizite, and Ayazu and Abo, and then the Oru and all that. These were places where violence was reported in the March 9 elections. What played out in these areas that we were able to have a smooth, conduct of the elections? Did the people also, resisted any form of breach?
Sorry, Claire, please, could you take that question again, please?
The areas where elections held, the Abombise, Ayazu, Ezinizite, Oru, and of course Owerri Municipal and all that, these were places where we had reports of pockets of violence in the March 9 election. What played out this time? Did we see the people, as happened in parts of the FCT, did the people resist any form of infractions?
Well, those areas you actually mentioned where some pockets of violence occurred in the governorship 2009 election was actually concluded. The areas where rerun was held was actually Olo, Ngopala, Ukuta, Isu, and Ikeduru. That is not to say that we would not give credit. Based on our observation, we saw that the Imo State Police Command, under the leadership of Commissioner of Police Dansuki, CP Dansuki Dambaba Galadanchi, and his men was actually on ground. Adequate security was provided. Then in the area of the people trying to resist and ensure that they don't have a repeat of what happened in the last governorship election, I mean the March 9, 2019 election now, we saw that they were ready to protect their votes. They came out very early. They conducted themselves in an orderly manner. There was this cooperation, this understanding, and you could see that having had the successful outcome of 22 out of 27, so many of them were eager to make sure that whoever it is they are supporting, the candidate they are supporting, come out clean in the remaining 5 local government on that context. So in the area of crowd violence, ballot box snatching, we didn't have any of that. We didn't see any of that. The process was smooth. There was only a little issue at Isu local government where one of the candidates who coincidentally eventually won, the Action Alliance candidate, actually complained to us that her party agents and her supporters were actually bullied by some thugs and all of that, but at the end of the day, that area of it was being taken care of and the process went on smoothly in that area.
All right, Bright, still with you. Bright, still with you. Tell us something, because one of the lingering stories out of the February 23rd presidential and national assembly elections, particularly in the senatorial district in Imo, was to the fact that a returning officer made a declaration and returned under duress. Did we have a repeat anywhere in the supplementary election? Was any returning officer under duress?
No, fortunately, we didn't have any of that. It is fair, based on our own observation, given the places we monitored, it is fair to say that the process was hitch-free this time around. We saw a great improvement from the presidential National Assembly election, which occurred from February 23rd down to the March 9 governorship election and the supplementary election. We could see every grade of improvement at every step. The February 23rd presidential National Assembly election was not all that perfect. We have several hitches in different areas, arrival of materials, violence, pocket of violence here and there, the same with the governorship election. But the rerun election, they don't have any of that based on our observation. Arrival of materials were there. INEC officers, INEC ad hoc personnel also got there on time. The voting also was smooth, no card reader malfunctioning, and there was no returning officer that was held hostage. The process was, it's fair to say the process was free and fair.
Right, Bright, thanks. But back to Sokoto Network Center, Abdulrahman. Abdulrahman, 2 issues that I would like you to address, because there were reports of instances of malfunctioning of smart card readers in some locations in Sokoto, plus allegations of underage voters being present on the queue and also in possession of what on the face of it looked like valid PVCs.
The issue of malfunctioning of the card reader, especially during this supplementary elections, has reduced drastically, and I think at the collation center, the returning officers for the local governments, I think it's only one that records a problem of card reader, and there was the problem was rectified later on, and the elections went on at that location. I think it's even what some of the factors that delayed the last local government from bringing its results as expected. And the issue of underage voting and or underage people having card reader on the queue, especially during these supplementary elections, there were no issues of that because of the presence of security, INEC officials, party agents. There was a keen contest during these supplementary elections, and there are no issues of underage voting recorded in almost parts of the places where the supplementary elections were held.
Rahman, thank you very much,
Yes,
Claire.
I just like to ask Abdurrahman if we've heard any word from the losing party. What have been their reactions so far?
There's one issue I wanted even to shed more light on, especially with regards to results from Sokoto, that from the presidential, National Assembly elections to the governorship and state assembly elections. So far, especially Sokoto has almost 3 senatorial seats, and which were all won by the APC, and the House of Representatives. Sokoto has 11 House of Representative seats, and an APC won 9 out of the 11 seats. PDP has 2. And coming to the state assembly elections, though it was up till this moment, the INEC has not officially given out the list, but from the collation centers we visited, out of the 30 constituency seats in the state assembly, APC had the majority, winning 16, while the PDP has 14 out of the 30 seats so far. And I think that shows how the contest was keenly demonstrated, and how people came out to show what they want and how they want it to be.
Abdurrahman, has there been any statement from the losing candidate or the losing party?
Officially, there is no any response, but on social media, I saw a statement issued by one of the media aides to the APC campaign organization, denying the APC candidate and the APC leader in Sokoto State, Senator Wamoko, from earlier reports that they've called Tambwal to congratulate him. But the media aide said there is no any statement or any phone call to Governor Tambwal from the APC congratulating him, and they are forging ahead for the next step of action.
Abdurrahman, some of the numbers you gave a while ago in terms of the National Assembly and State House of Assembly elections are quite interesting. But this would appear obviously to be absolute numbers. All 3 senatorial seats went to the APC, and 9 of the House of Rep seats went to the APC, and 2. Do you have a sense of the differences in the scores, for instance, between the parties, or was it that they just dusted them and they couldn't, as we used to say in those days, see the suns on their spikes, as they were running to victory?
Most of, I don't have the actual record, but in the elections, the previous elections we monitored, the margins are not more than 1,000 in some places. Most of them, there is no any big margin in the contest, and one of the seats of the House of Representatives, that is for Bodinga, Dengeshuni, Treta, Federal Constituency, was initially declared inconclusive, but on the 9th March elections, they had supplementary election, and the APC won with a margin of close to 2,000 or 4,000 votes.
Rahman, Usman, Jabrela, and Bright. We're keeping you on hold for now. Of course, Ifeoma Ojinta is still here with us, and Bayo. Let's quickly go on a short break. When we come back, we've got tweets here. We'll read out the tweet and we take the last lap of our discussion.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. No be only to connect lights. Come you and yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who would they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, wetin you talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from over.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. Let's quickly take on the tweets. We have many of them with us. Kingsley.
John Adams, I think Nigeria has reached a stage where political leaders don't care how much negative impact the people feel, but they just want to be in power at all costs. They need to have a rethink.
And Hayatu Abdullahi Jibia, the supplementary governorship election held on the 23rd March 2019 in Kano is not an election. The DIG sent to Kano to monitor election and provide adequate security did not do his work.
We don't have any proof for that assertion.
Exactly.
Unyema is the next tweet that we're taking. So Saturday's supplementary election was a total disgrace to our democracy. It's the fact that it's not properly conducted.
Right, and Nosa P. Somorui, I expected INEC to use the supplementary elections to correct the ills of the past. And like, for instance, Togri in the Osun supplementary election, we shouldn't have had what happened at Kano if INEC had done their homework properly.
Festus Akimboyewa says, why Saturday's supplementary elections were an improvement on the general elections? The elections were still marred by violence in some states. Nigerians should be saddened by the shooting of INEC's returning officer and the kidnapping of some INEC staff. Such acts should not be associated with our elections in this day and age. And INEC must learn lessons from the many challenges thrown up by these elections and take effective steps to address them.
And Prince Zatji, the rerun was short of expectations. The aspiration to meet up with margin of lead is something else. Acts of violence should be condemned by all. People shouldn't be killed for exercising their civic responsibility. 2019 election hasn't lived up to expectations.
Olakunle Sharon says the just concluded rerun elections are not, but creating room for rigging and wreaking of havoc.
And Chris Simeon says, call it supplementary election or general election or whatsoever. This is the worst election Nigeria ever conducted. Full of rigging, intimidation, militarization, killing Santagre.
Otega. Now, we have the worst election in the history of Nigeria. Politicians should at least accept the shameful act and the conduct of fraudulent elections.
All right, and Mike Anyako tweets. Last Saturday's supplementary elections were still little improvement on the main elections, though noticed pockets of violence. The primary assignment of INEC is to conduct elections, not to provide security. Our politicians are very desperate to win by all means.
Sani Michael Omakoji has this last week. Now, from investigation, supplementary elections in Kano were peaceful. However, it's disheartening to see what happened in the Kano rerun, where INEC staff were harassed, and police assaulted, and party agents attacked by thugs. Whether we accept it or not, it had never been this bad. That's Sunday Michael Omakoji, one of our regulars. Bayo, we're sufficiently of age in the Second Republic.
Yes, again, there's no deterrence for electoral violence, and that is why it has persisted. The other day, I think, who was it that was saying that if anybody is convicted for electoral violence like Togri, the maximum jail term he gets is 3 years. So while he's put away for 3 years, his patron, the politician, is prepared to take care of his family until when he comes back, and he's again back in the market before the next election is there. So most often than not, in a few instances where there are some people are arrested, you hear only about arrests. You hardly hear about prosecutions, because soon after elections are over, there are principals who follow up and say, let the boys go. And eventually that is what we have. And unless and until we make sure that there is serious consequence for electoral violence, either by through thuggery or possession of arms, we are not going to see an end to this, because the quantum of the desperation among politicians is heightened by the day. It's the desperation to get elected at all costs that leads to this idea of establishing vanguards and having valiants that they use as thugs.
People have tried to make comparison between, the conduct of 2015 elections and what we've had now. And we've heard from the tweets, of course, the views there expressed are precisely those of those who have sent in the tweets, not that of NTA. Bayo, in terms of conduct, in terms of strength of, improvement by INEC, is what we've seen in terms of comparison, are they justified?
Well, I think there has been an improvement because the efficiency of the card reader has been an incremental compared to what we had in 2015. And you also can say that the bigger the head, the bigger the headache. How do I mean? You see that when we came to the gubernatorial elections and the supplementary elections, the challenges were few. And so when we were having the presidential and national assembly, there were more challenges, card readers, thuggery across the nation. But even the issue of challenge of militarization, so-called militarization of the electoral process, it is located in 1, 2, or 3 states. It's not all over the federation. And you keep on hearing, it was the same thing in 2015. Those same states had complained about militarization in their own location. And it's because of the normal environment, the kind of restlessness that is prevailing in that environment. That is what sometimes accentuates the involvement of the military. But on comparative terms, if you look at 2015 and 2019, I think we've had some considerable improvements.
Considering that, sorry, Kingsley, considering that INEC had, to pretend over 91 political parties, of course, we know the, magnitude of what they had to do. Can we give credit to thumbs up to INEC?
Well, the other day, Kingsley described the ballot paper as a mat, because you have to accommodate so many political... That also had its challenge, because if you look at it comparatively, you see that voided votes had been on the increase, because the ability of the voters to manage the ballot paper, do your indelible ink mark, and roll it over so as not to get it devoid by touching another place, was very marginal. And you can see that, particularly when you go to the rural areas, you begin to see that the voided votes are on the increase because of the level of education there. In the urban centers, yes, the level of voided votes were limited because people can't understand. And again, it is a challenge for the political party, the National Orientation Agency. There was not enough voter education to let people understand. And we also have to get our acts together. We cannot continue to have 91 political parties contesting an election. Yes, it's a freedom of association, yes, and everybody has a right to contest, but we must put up the rules to the extent that we will be able to have manageable political parties contesting. This was very unmanageable, and that's contributed to the challenges we are having with the electoral processes.
All right, Bayo, just one point you made earlier. You said the bigger the head, the bigger the headache. I was just wondering, a headache, of course, occurs on the brain, obviously. And if you take a look at the ostrich has a small brain because the eye of an ostrich is actually bigger than the brain. I don't know whether ostriches have headaches, but what they are known for is that they bury their head in the sand. And that, of course, has also become a wise saying that you deny the fact that there is a storm overhead, and to the extent that it doesn't affect your head. But, I tried to draw you out a while ago. When we saw what happened during the Second Republic, the elections, 1979 supervised by the military, 1983, of course, where they were having moonslide and so on and so forth, and what happened in parts of Ondo, old Ondo State. The scenario that we are seeing now, some election observers will say, fine, it is because the avenues for manipulation are shrinking considerably, and that's why you are having resort to attacks, on collation centers, and then also disruption of the voting process so that there might be cancellation, and once there's cancellation, that would then affect the opponent's results. In your opinion, have we thought sufficiently around some of the avenues still open to potential election riggers and how to deal with these persons much more crucially?
Well, again, it's a factor of our electoral process. One thing about our electoral process is a winner-take-all. That winner-take-all syndrome makes the politician very, very desperate. If it was on the basis of proportional representation, as we discussed some time ago, as we had, for instance, in the First Republic, during the parliamentary system, then, like the example we were giving here, if a candidate scored 900 votes and the second candidate scored 895 votes, it means that the winner of the 900 votes, the runners-up with 895 votes, all his votes are voided, are useless. But if it is proportional representation, like the example the chap gave from Sokoto, you could see the distribution, particularly when it came to the State House of Assembly. People tended to vote for the people they were very familiar with, and therefore the distribution along the party lines were quite not as wide as it was with the National Assembly and with the National Assembly and the presidential election. So the import is that when the level of desperation among politicians is reduced, the tendency is that you have less violence. And the only remedy perhaps is to look at the issue of proportional representation again. Winner take all gets our politicians to be very desperate. And when they are desperate, we have accentuated violence in the electoral system.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. Of course, as you said, the issue of proportional representation will keep coming up, and it's a valid proposition, some would say. Ifeoma Ojinta, back to you. Again, part of the menacing feature that we have seen of elections in recent times is the so-called see and buy. What did you see on Saturday in the supplementary elections?
Well, I didn't see that. Did I buy?
What did you see? Did you see and buy?
Well, I would say that we would say the supplementary election, was fair enough, because the outcome, of the supplementary elections, we saw that 2 incumbents did not retain their seats, which is another interesting thing, because people, are no longer voting probably for the popularity of a party. The area council or local government, as the case may be, it's like a community. These people are closely knitted. They know you, they know who your father is, they know who they want. Now, in Buhari, for instance, the chairman lost to the opposition. In Kuje, the sitting chairman also lost to the opposition. Then in Kwali, it was keenly contested. Though the incumbent is not recontesting, but somebody from his party, polled about 14,200 and something votes, while the opposition got 14,100 and it was a close contest, and it just shows that the people know what they want, and would say it was fair enough. I didn't see buy anything.
Okay, well, I'm not saying that you are a reporter, Abdul Rahman in Sokoto, tell us something. Again, there were widespread reports in the past in various locations. There were some arrests made. And by the way, last week when the police and the military gave their joint press conference, they did say that nearly 1,200 persons had been arrested as at that point for various electoral offenses beginning on the 23rd of February. So, presumably, amongst the offenses committed would have been see and buy. Abdul Rahman, were there electoral vote traders on Saturday in the supplementary elections?
Kingsley, on the Saturday supplementary elections, even if there were the vote buyers but not at the polling units, there are allegations that the vote buying by all the political parties. There are allegations that all the political parties were involved in the vote buying, but not at the polling units, and all the vote buying was were reported to be done prior to the election day, and especially at the major local government where they have large polling units for the supplementary elections, that is Kepi and Gada. Our reporters that visited those areas said they were able to see presence of EFCC operatives hanging around to see anybody that is trying to induce people with money to vote for his political party. So during the supplementary elections, because of the security presence and INEC officials, adequate INEC officials at the election point, there was nothing at the election venues of vote buying and other electoral offences.
Well, I just, if Claire still has a question, you might also take that along. On the eve of the supplementary elections, at least in some other locations, there were reports of emergency projects, boreholes suddenly being sunk and, all kinds of sop, as it were, being used to mollify whatever dissent there was amongst the voters in those areas. Did Sokoto witness that as well, to say quickly, tar their roads, clear their drains, supply them with exercise books if they were in school?
In Sokoto, there was nothing new, only that the political parties relocated, most of the political party agents relocated to those areas, and the major areas are far away from the capital city of Sokoto, that is Kepi and Gada, Goronyo, Ilela. But there was no any major, any project being done within that period, but the political parties relocated to those areas to campaign and get votes for their parties.
Rahman Usman Jibrila, we'll just pause you and take a last question from Bright Ebotre from Enugu. Bright, I'm wondering if your camera lenses were bright enough to also capture, sites of vote trading, otherwise known as see and buy.
Hello, please, can you take that question again?
Sorry, the connection is quite not clear. I was asking if your camera lenses were bright enough to capture, scenes of vote trading, Kingsley, and not just Kingsley, that has been referred to as see and buy.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, we didn't record any, although we cannot actually rule it out completely, but we did not actually record any scene of vote buying and the likes. We only slightly had an issue in the issue, like I said earlier, where the AA House of Assembly candidate, Ms. Ngozi Obiefule, complained to us that some thugs were trying to bully her party agents and probably people who were supposed to vote for her. Those were the issues we had earlier, but eventually the police was able to get the place calm and voting continued. And eventually she, based on the result that was announced yesterday, she won.
Mutual correspondent joined us via Skype and, of course, reporting on the supplementary elections in Owerri. I tell you, that's in Imo State. We'd like to thank you, Bright, for being with us on the program this morning. We also would like to thank Abdul Rahman Jibrila, who joined us from our Sokoto Network Center. Abdul Rahman, thank you for being with us on the program this morning. Okay, Claire, we'll have our last set of tweets to take right now. Amagbola has this tweet. It says, the just concluded supplementary elections have clearly shown how desperate Nigerian politicians can be. Now, it tells the extent to which they may go to realize their ambition. But the question is, for how long can you continue with this? How many Nigerians are we going to lose in order for people to realize their political ambition? Ad hoc staff have been victims of attacks and kidnapped, and even the academia, who were contracted, members of the academia, haven't been left out of the assaults. Whither do we go from here?
Okay, Kingsley, I have this tweet from Ibrahim Modu Aji, and it reads, it is better to disenfranchise voters and declare a winner than declaring it inconclusive, because violence that will come up with the supplementary election is unquantifiable. Now, prevention of lives is supreme even in the Nigeria's constitution. And it says, as NTA rounds up programs in 2019 general elections, kudos to NTA technical crews, presenters, and reporters for a wonderful job. NTA is truly the largest network in Africa. Maintain the tempo. And just as we were taking the tweets, Esther Uzoma joined us, but we will soon introduce her. Kingsley.
All right. Well, we just would like to take, our last guest, who is joining us. Of course, is a fairly familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria. Esther Uzoma, of course, who is the deputy of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room. Esther Uzoma, of course, you've observed the 2019 elections. The off-cycle elections. Just one point, in addition to whatever else you may wish to say with regard to the supplementary polls last Saturday. Some are now arguing, including the Civil Society Situation Room, that rather than being an aid to determining who a clear winner is in an election, supplementary elections have now, as it were, created an uneven playing field for our elections. Your thoughts?
I speak in my capacity as Esther Uzoma. I do not speak for the Situation Room now. The philosophy behind the margin of lead principle is a roguish thing. Why? Because they said the margin of lead between the two leading candidates, if it is less than the number of registered voters, pursuant to or annulled votes, pursuant to clause 26 and then 53 of the Electoral Act. The clause there, the catch is registered voters. And we know that the number of registered people who turn out, registered voters, first of all, not all of them collect their PVCs. And secondly, not every registered voter turn up for elections. So why are we making the margin of lead, the differential between the number, why are we placing it side and side by the number of registered voters? It is a curious philosophy. And it is the bet of all these inconclusive episodes we are seeing. It is a roguish thing. We must revisit it.
And in this place?
And in this place, let's take clear winners. Let us take clear, because in that margin of lead principle, INEC now said, look at the scenarios of what will happen, and then they said, one of it is that if there is violence, foisted, or refusal to use smart card readers, then you just the PO will record 0 and then declare winner. But this philosophy of margin of lead, you appreciate what I'm saying?
I do.
Yes, so it's a roguish thing.
Well, Esther Uzoma, thank you. Also
personal opinion.
Yeah, yes. I know you're also a lawyer.
Yes.
Look, with two issues here. One has to do with what you describe as a roguish principle of margin of lead.
Yes.
The other, of course, has to do with the cancellation of an election.
Yes.
Now, suppose, and Bayo has discussed this, suppose your opponent decides to foment trouble in your stronghold in order to take advantage of the potential cancellation of your votes. Who should therefore bear the liability for such instigation of the disruption of your electoral process?
Fantastic. That is a judicial question. It is not an administrative one. Look at the clear division of labor.
What then is the duty of the judiciary? If you will make, let me tell you, cancellation violence is a matter of strict evidence. Look at the quagmire we are having now. In Anam, Chris, for instance, in the election of Chris Suba, the returning officer said he made the declaration under duress. INEC said, no, it doesn't qualify with the duress of Okorocha. We will give returning certificate of return. Have you seen the? They cannot go in. They will not decide that question. It's a judicial one. It's not an administrative question of whether there was violence sufficient enough. It is an administrative. It's not an administrative. It's a judicial one. So what would the judiciary do?
Are you on Good Morning Nigeria? Probably a couple of weeks ago, we had the INEC Director of Voter Education and Publicity, and one or two other lawyers, plus another regular guest of ours from Port Harcourt, that's Festus Oguche. Oguche was talking about more judicial intervention in reviewing cases, particularly in declaring an election inconclusive. And the other guests, including Osaze Oze, were arguing that we already have too much presence of the judiciary in our elections. But if you are not, you are also apparently now arguing, and I believe so, that declaring an election to have been marred by violence should be a judicial function. Now, if the judiciary decides, okay, that violence was real, we're back to the same inconclusive thing. I say reconduct.
No.
What will happen?
When the rules, one of the scenarios that will give place to that margin of lead principle. One of the scenarios they built in it is that if there is violence that didn't allow elections to hold, the PO will record 0 votes and proceed with the rest. But what the margin of lead is now saying that, listen, if eventually, say the PO cancelled, 12 or 2 polling units, okay, that's about 1,000. If at the end of the day, result is collected, and the difference between the 2 leading candidates is less than the number, including those ones that were cancelled or annulled. Hello? See, number one, you've revisited your administrative decision. You understand what? Yes. Because, so that is it. It's clearly, the more I look at it, the more, this is not the position of the situation. This is mine as a practicing lawyer in aggressive private practice. I will argue vehemently before any judge that this principle is a roguish to it. So at one point, you now say we are cancelled because of violence, annulled votes because of our voting. And then, when the margin of lead now comes, you say, listen, we're going to take into consideration both the ones that were cancelled due to violence or annulments. Can't you see? There's something, it defies logic.
All right, Esther, I know we just kept quiet because that was a legal issue, and Kingsley and Esther had to trash that out. But of course, it only shows that, the judiciary will have a lot on the hands, as time goes on. But let me draw you back to the Situation Room where you originally belonged. There was a report we had yesterday, and briefly, we that says, of course, that the Situation, Room has made observations of improvement in the supplementary elections. I know you've been up and doing Nigeria Decides window. Yes. Can you pinpoint those areas of improvement?
Well, number one, the military were not visible. They did not, the optics of the military, they were not, up in our faces. Number two, there was deployment. Logistics was not a challenge. So these are some of the gains. Polls opened on time. These were some of the gains. Besides this, it was a riot.
I just wonder, Esther, look, supplementary elections that we have seen at the weekend, these are just tiny elections. Tiny. In a sense, probably just a slight elaboration over the off-cycle elections that we saw, Anambra, Edo, Osun, Ekiti, and so on and so forth. At the back of your mind, is there an issue that arises as to current capacity to conduct a general elections, properly so-called?
Clearly, there's a huge challenge. In Kano, I don't know. You know, we have said it, I have said it in this program before, the presence of, you know, security personnel, state-sponsored. In Kano, they had the day. They were a huge challenge to security forces. The monopoly, clearly the monopoly of state over violence is broken. Clearly. I do not know whether, you know, frankly, it defies, well, we are studying it right now, but that's a challenge. It's not easy to manage that. If 84 million collected PVCs and we are having this sort of
registered.
Registered. So imagine when 200 million of us just imagine when 200 million of us, we will run INEC out of Nigeria. Clearly, logistics is a huge challenge. Clearly.
All right, Esther Uzoma, lawyer and, of course, Deputy Chair of Civil Society Situation Room for the Elections. We'd like to thank you for being part of our discussion on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you very much.
Appreciation also to our correspondent, Ifeoma Ojinta, who covered the supplementary elections in the affected areas in the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you. And Bayo Atoyebe, our regular newspaper reviewer, of course, who's been part of this conversation this morning. Bayo, thank you for being around.
Thank you, too.
Okay, so it's on that note, of course, that we call it today on Good Morning Nigeria. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, I'm Claire Delabo Abdurazek, and I want to specifically appreciate Esther for coming, and of course, Mr. Bayo for staying by. And do have a great day. Don't forget to watch a rebroadcast of this episode later today, 5 minutes past 5 on NTA News 24, channel 419 on DSTV, and 46 on GoTV.
Slavery is an evil practice abolished all over the world over 200 years ago. But today, human traffickers are selling human beings as slaves in Africa. It is your responsibility to make sure that you and the people you know do not fall into slavery. Don't believe fake promises of jobs abroad.
People went to say Libya, Italy no use you when they carry me on top water. 4 days now they lock me for inside house, no food, no water. I nearly die. Now God, when me heaven and earth, now save me. If you get 1 naira for Nigeria, you get junior one, you say you no get papa, you no get mama, that make you come out. I beg go they do farm work. You better pass person when enter road.
Don't accept to travel to Europe through the Sahara Desert. You may be walking into slavery. Don't be a slave.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
I tell you, man, music is the most powerful force for this world. As better jam they flow, now so everybody will feel and they rock out. You know, as a musician, I see this thing every time I dey stage they perform. You know, everybody does a scatter body. You know, even when you bought yourself with the form, that's where they feel like say you don't even touch yourself. Before you know, music don't they move there, they don't enter that side. You know, that time it don't matter which political party where you dey or the person where they support. It don't matter. So why it no fit be the same on election day?